Hello everyone, my name is PHALLAPANG. My Chinese name is Jolina, and my student ID number is 113CU1034. And today I'm going to present about the question one. So the question one is about on April 2, the Trump administration announced a series of the tariffs described as reciprocal, ranging from 10% to 50%, imposed on nearly every country in the world. Taiwan reciprocal tariff rate was initially set at 32%, but was subsequently reduced to 10% for a 90-day probationary period. And during this period, the Taiwanese government might negotiate the final reciprocal tariff rate with the Trump administration. So for this question, first question, what is a tariff? A tariff is a tax on imported goods that makes foreign products more expensive. And what is a reciprocal tariff? A reciprocal tariff means one country matches the tariff imposed by another. So in this case, the US imposed tariff on Taiwan, and Taiwan may respond with its own tariff on the US goods. How will this reciprocal tariff directly affect Taiwan export to the United States? So the US tariff makes Taiwanese goods more expensive for American buyers, so Taiwan export to the US will fall. And at the same time, Taiwan may impose retaliatory tariffs, making US goods more expensive in Taiwan, reducing import from the US, though both export and import between the two countries are likely to decrease. For this question, what is the nominal exchange rate? How will the nominal exchange rate be affected by this reciprocal tariff? As you can see from the diagram, it says that the nominal exchange rate shows the price of US dollars in terms of new Taiwan dollars. So since Taiwan is exporting less, there is less demand for USD to pay for those exports. The demand curve for USD should lag once the price stay at the same. This leads to a lower nominal exchange rate, meaning the new Taiwan dollar appreciates slightly. And based on the diagram, because the demand for USD had decreased, the new Taiwan dollar appreciates in nominal terms. It becomes stronger relative to the US dollar. How will this reciprocal tariff directly affect the United States next export? The US will import less from Taiwan due to tariff, which could improve the trade balance. However, Taiwan may reduce its import from the US as well. If export fall more than import, the trade balance may worsen. So the overall effect is uncertain. And this question, what is the real exchange rate? How will it be affected by the reciprocal tariff? According to the diagram, the real exchange rate adjusts the nominal rate by price level to reflect the true cost of goods. As US export fall due to Taiwan retaliation, the demand for USD in the real FX market drops. The demand curve should lag and supply stay the same. This causes the real exchange rate to fall, making US goods cheaper internationally. And based on diagram, the President Trump expected the tariff to reduce imports and improve net export, but in reality, both import and export may fall, although the real exchange rate drop can make US goods cheaper. The retaliation limit export recovery, so the trade balance may not improve as expected, especially in the short term. Thank you for listening.
Hi everyone, my name is NAPAT number 113CU1042. Today I'm going to present about my presentation in question 2 and question 3 economic finals. So let's hop into our first question, question 2. At the 2024 Taipei Computex NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang stated that Taiwan is now at the center of AI. This statement was supported by the significant increase in Taiwan semiconductor export to the US and other countries in 2024. NVIDIA and AMD, the two global leaders in AI-related technologies, announced plans to establish overseas headquarters and R&D centers in Taiwan. Additionally, many foreign investors purchased shares of TSMC as a result. Taiwan economy experienced substantial growth in 2024. So let's hop into our first question in the question 2. How would the increase in Taiwan semiconductor export to the US and the rest of the world affect Taiwan real GDP and overall price level in the short run? So in 2024, Taiwan experienced a significant boom in semiconductor export, which just means like this increase in the net export directly rise aggregate demand, shifting the AD curve to the right, as you can see on the graphical that I put it in the slides. In the short run, this leads to an increase in the real GDP and the price level. So let's hop into our second question. What type of investment is the construction of overseas headquarters and R&D centered by NVIDIA and AMD? How would this construction affect Taiwan real GDP and overall price level in the short run? So as the question said, NVIDIA and AMD decision to build R&D center in Taiwan is a form of foreign direct investment because they build a physical facility. This boosts the investment component of aggregate demand in the short run. Just like export growth in the previous one, this increase both real GDP and the price level. So it's the same as the previous one. Yep. The third question: what type of investment is the purchase of TSMC share by foreign investor? Do you expect this type of investment to directly affect Taiwan aggregate demand in the short run? What impact will have on the Taiwan real GDP and the overall price level in the short run? So when foreign investor buy TSMC, it considered as a portfolio investment. This doesn't immediately raise aggregate demand since no actual production is involved. However, it can slightly boost a demand through a wealth effect, but the direct short-run impact is in the minimal. Yes. So let's hop into our fourth question. If the Taiwanese government takes no action in response to the AI-driven economic growth, how will Taiwan real GDP and overall price level change in the long run? If the government doesn't intervene, the economy will naturally adjust in the long run by itself. Higher productivity and technological progress will shift the short-run aggregate supply curve over here to the right. The result further increase in the real GDP, but with more stable price. This shows the graph that the both AD and the short-run aggregate supply curve will shift to the right. That's it. If Taiwanese government is concerned about an overheat economy, for example, the asset bubble in the stock and housing market, driven by the AI boom, which types of fiscal and monetary policy could be implemented to cool down the economy? So list one fiscal policy 2 and one monetary policy 2 and explain how each can reduce the real GDP and the overall price level. So I'm gonna explain it. If the government is concerned about overheating, such as the asset bubble, right, it can be responded with the fiscal or the monetary policy. The first one, fiscal policy, may involve raising tax or cutting government spending to reduce demand. Monetary policy could involve a raising interest rates to slow borrowing and the investment. The both are aimed at the cooling down inflation and stabilizing the economy in the end. on. So let's move on into question 3. The opposition party in Taiwan, Legislative Yuan, have cut various government spending proposals submitted by the Executive Yuan, while the ruling party agrees that these budget cuts will harm Taiwan economy. The opposition claim they are helping the Taiwanese people by saving public money. So let's figure it out by the first question. How will these budget cuts directly influence aggregate demand in Taiwan? How will change in the aggregate demand affect the real GDP and the overall price level in Taiwan short run? When the legislative yuan cuts the government spending, it directly reduces aggregate demand in the short run. This shift to the left leads to a decrease in the real GDP and a lower overall price level, which is illustrated in the graph already. So government spending lower, which mean the 80 will shift left, and the short run effects like both real GDP and the price level will all fall down. In the second question, do you expect a multiplier effect to result from the decrease in government spending? Explain how the multiplier effect arises and how it can amplify the impact of the initial budget cuts on the economy. The budget cuts also trigger a multiple effect as the government spend less. People and business receive less income, so they spend less, that's why. This reduces the consumption cost further drop in income and output across the economy. The larger the marginal propensity to consume. The second question, do you expect a multiplier effect to result from the decrease in government spending? Explain how the multiplier effect arises and how it can amplify the impact of the initial budget cuts on the economy. The budget cut also trigger a multiple effect. As the government spend less, people and businesses receive less income, so they spend less. This is why. This reduced consumption causes further drops in income and output across the economy. The larger marginal propensity to consume, the stronger multiplier effect. So the result is total GDP fall by more than the original cuts. Third question, how will these budget cuts directly affect public saving? What will be effect on demand and supply in Taiwan loanable fund markets? How will the real interest rate, private investment, private saving, and national saving be affected? Support your reasoning with both descriptive and the graphical analysis. So, cutting the government spending increase public saving, shifting the supply of loanable fund to the right, as is shown in the graph. This lower the real interest rate, which is encourage private investment. Overall national saving increase due to the higher public saving. That's it. Fourth question. Based on your analysis in question 3, what will happen to Taiwan in net capital outflow? With the lower interest rates, Taiwanese investors seek higher returns abroad. This increased net capital outflow. The graph shows how the capital outflow put pressure on the foreign exchange market by increasing the supply of Taiwan dollar. As you can see in the graph, the NCO1 and the NCO2 after the increasing. And number 5, how will the exchange in net capital outflow affect the supply of new Taiwan dollar in the foreign currency exchange market? So, when investors convert NT dollar into foreign currency, the supply of NT dollar increase. This causing the NT dollar to depreciate. A weaker currency makes Taiwan export cheaper to foreign buyer, improving net export. That's it. So, NCO rise will cause the supply of NT rise after that. So the supply will shift to right. The real exchange rate will fall down, which means the NTD depreciates. And the export rise up, imports rise down, which just means the net export will rise up. And the last question. Based on your previously analyzed in question 3 and question 5, how will these budget cuts indirectly influence Taiwan aggregate demand? By summarizing, the direct impact of reduced government spending and the multiplier effect, and the indirect effect via the loanable fund and foreign exchange market. Do you expect aggregate demand in Taiwan to increase or decrease as a result of the legislative yuan budget cuts? For this one, the conclusion will be the direct effect of budget cuts lower aggregate demand. The multiplier effect amplify this. However, increased investment and export from currency depreciation partially offset the loss. Despite these offset, aggregate demand overall still decline. This is what the conclusion for me. So the final outcome is like net effect likely to still as an 80 fall down, but partially offset also. That's it. So thank you for listening to our presentation. Hope we see each other soon. Bye bye.